Hello, and welcome to Rockin the Love. I am Robyn.
And I'm Gil, and we're happy to have you all with us today. This is the second Wednesday in what day? What month? March. Yes, we're happy to have you all.
And it's not only the second Wednesday. I am wearing these silly things on my head that you probably can't see say happy birthday on each hand because it is Gil's birthday. So I've got flowers and dangly, sparkly things to say happy birthday, my love.
Thank you. Thank you.
So this is a show about relationships, and Gil and I are married, and we are living how many miles apart? I don't even know.
Somewhere right around 1,000 plus
I
or
was
minus.
all dramatic in my head. I was going to say 5,000, but then I
Yeah,
realized
no, it's not that far.
I would have put you in New York. Anyway, he's in New Mexico, and I'm in California, and our show is about relationships and finding the love in each of them. So we're working now on finding the long distance love. So happy birthday. I know it seems like no big deal, but this is the first time in 23 years that we have spent our birthdays apart.
Yep, it is.
In our whole relationship.
Weird.
And welcome Johanna. That she says happy birthday.
Oh, thanks.
Oh.
Woo.
So yeah, that's a big deal. That's a big deal. So I don't want to talk a lot about big deals because we have lots of fun guests today. I'm going to take off my attire if you don't mind. We have lots of fun guests. We have our guest from last week, Myrna Lopez.
Was she a guest or was she just a crasher? I don't recall precisely.
When you're rocking the love, if you show up here, you are always a guest. You are in your home. You're right. She's not a guest. She's part of the family. So, and we have the illustrious Reverend Laura Topper with her spouse, Jason Salmon. So it is a full house, and we're excited to continue our conversation on authenticity and talk about authenticity in relationships. It makes me kind of break a sweat just talking about it. So let's just take a minute and maybe we'll summarize later. You want to summarize now?
Summarize now. Just give them a quick overview.
Okay, you do that.
I know though that I can in this moment. It's my birthday and my brain is shifted to some other land.
Okay, we're only pulling that card a couple times today. So
okay, good.
One. So our conversation was about authenticity, and I know Myrna's out there going, I could tell them. I know. It's about authenticity, and really, what does it take? I mean, what is authenticity, and how do you have it in your relationships, and all of those things. And Emma the dog is wanting to speak about it, so you might have to continue just a little bit and come back, and we'll do the good news because I'm going to let her outside.
All right. So we're just looking at this whole idea of how do we show up authentically in a relationship? How do we move forward? And what does it mean to really show up as our full selves? So sometimes we think that means that we have to be something in particular, but really it's about being who we are, and that sometimes it's not easy to actually follow what you know is your heart and who you are. So that's where the whole authenticity thing comes in. Thank you, Reverend Sherry Lynn. Good afternoon. So that's kind of the thing. I think we should go on to the good news. That's enough. We'll get into it. Wait, we don't have Robyn on screen.
What'd you say?
You weren't on screen. We weren't hearing you.
Oh, and here I am. So it's time for the good news. And the good news is our segment where we celebrate the good news in the world because we have such an opportunity to hear about all the stuff that's wrong and going wrong that we look for things that are going right that we can share with you. So what do you got?
Well, since we have our illustrious guest from the UK on today, I thought I'd bring you some good news from the UK. So There is a woman who was frustrated because her local municipality did not they do recycle, but they don't recycle everything. There's a lot of things that they don't recycle. And so apparently she did her research and figured out what she could do. And she now runs her own private backyard recycling center where everyone brings their chip bags and their rubber gloves, I guess, and all kinds of things, like just all kinds of things like that that can be recycled, but aren't often by the big recycling centers. And she has some company that she's able to every month or so gather up the different items and vacuum seal them and send them off. And she gets a little bit of a dollar amount for all of that. And that all goes to charity. One in particular is one of her daughter's sports teams. So I think it's kind of cool. I think it's really cool.
That's great.
It's a matter of, how much difference can one person make?
Yeah.
Quite a bit.
And Sherry says, that's great. It has to begin somewhere. And that's so true. And that's so true. That's great. I love that story. I love that story because it's one person who probably doesn't think they're doing a lot, but is really just a trendsetter,
Well, and if they can inspire others, my goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah, to do the same.
Well, I decided today to not talk about humans but it's related. So my story is about a cat and a rabbit that have teamed up as parents, both after they gave birth days apart, and they're even feeding each other's babies. So
wow.
So stick with me because I do think this is related to us humans. The bunny known as Amy, she became like an interspecies nanny more than 2 weeks ago after Chrissy the cat moved her kittens to the rabbit hutch. So the woman had set up a hutch for the rabbit and her breed, but after checking in, she found that they were snuggled up. The two of them were snuggled up with their newborns. And first of all, she didn't even know that the cat was pregnant. So that was a big surprise. But then when she walked in and found them together, and she was really worried that they might fight and hurt each other. And so they tried to separate the babies out. But when they did, it turned out to be a mistake because the mothers immediately stopped feeding their young as a result of the stress.
Wow.
Yeah. And the animals were not only getting along well, but they were co-parenting their young. And Chrissy, the cat, was feeding the baby rabbits.
Wow.
And apparently the rabbit has only been feeding the rabbits once a day. And so Chrissy's picking up the slack because they need more. And so it's just, I mean, okay. So it's just weird, but it's cool. I mean, and I think the woman said she thinks that the rabbit mom wasn't making enough milk and the cat wanted to help. And the cat is feral and she won't even let the owner touch her. But the babies are all doing great and cuddle all the time. So I just thought,
wow.
Right? I mean, it's such a story about, we know what we know. And, I don't care. Anyone who says, like, I read another story about mussels and they were saying they don't have a brain and they don't have this. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, it seems that everybody seems to know things that we don't think they know. You know what I mean? And I just think it's such a, I know it's an animal story, but it's such a story of what's possible, and if it's possible there, it's possible everywhere. So
doesn't it sound a little bit like our God kids?
Feral?
Feral, yes, the feral part. That was right, yes. No, I just mean, how in humans they can intentionally come together sometimes and figure out how to support young moving forward. bringing it together, and that's kind of a weird thing that happened with us. We all found ourselves in the same place, and then there we were.
Right.
And it sounds a little like that in an animal way, but I love it that they're like, a rabbit and a cat. That is so cool.
The pictures are so cute. They're all cuddled up with all these babies on top of them. It's just bizarre. But cool. Sherry says oneness. Yeah. I mean, it's times like that when you really know. Oneness. At least for me.
All right.
All right. So I'm so excited to go to a commercial break so that we can come back and see and chat with our guests. So stay tuned for Authenticity Down and Dirty.
A new thought.
Thank you, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, for your continued support. Thank you, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown Atlanta, for your monthly contribution. Thank you, Center for Spiritual Living North Jersey, for your monthly contribution. And please help us welcome Om Center for Spiritual Living in La Mesa, California. Thank you for your monthly donation. Thank you, Center for Spiritual Living Seattle, for your most generous donation. And a special thanks to Hefferlin Foundation for your generous technology grant. And Suze Ajit, thank you for your very generous donation. And a super special thank you to Dr. Tracy Brown, RSCP. Thanks for being a super donor. And a big shout out to all our committed donors.
Welcome back. This is Rockin the Love, and I'm Robyn.
And I'm Gil, and we welcome you back this afternoon, this morning, this evening, wherever you are. Thank you so much for joining us. We have a very special lineup of guests today that we'd like to share some time with. And our topic today is authenticity, down and dirty. Okay, so that gives you a clue. Do you want to introduce our guests?
What did you say?
Want to introduce our guests?
I do. well, yeah. So what we decided after last week's show was to really dive a little deeper into authenticity and authenticity in relationships. Not that everything is in a relationship, but we're talking about marital, spousal, love, dating type relationships, where you're committed to a partner for a while. And so we have some for a whilers here with us. I'm going to let them introduce themselves because I could talk the rest of the show about them. But there's the woman of power herself, Laura Topper, with her husband, Jason, and Mirna Lopez Trevithick, with who is, I'm not introducing them, but they're all amazing practitioners, ministers of many things, music and love and creativity. And tell us about yourselves. Just give us a little something for those out there that don't know you. Myrna, you can start.
Me first? Okay, I was going to give the word to the Reverend Laura.
The reverends always get the words first and last. So no. You start.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you. Thank you. My name is Mirna Lopez Tribetek, and I am a practitioner at Center for Spiritual Living Merida. What else? I'm part of the Prac Council. I'm a friend of Robyn and Rev Gil, and also Reverend Laura. And I'm sure now we'll become friends of Jason and perhaps Reverend Michael too behind the camera. So I am a friend of a lot of people. So it's a pleasure to be here again. And this time I'm invited. Last time, I think, Reverend Gil, you're right. I was a crasher, but a good one.
Thank you, Myrna.
We're glad you did.
Laura. Reverend Laura, you're muted.
It's so great to be here and from the UK, yes. And what can I say? I'm feeling the love and excited to be here with my husband, Jason.
Yeah. And do you know how long we've been married?
We've been married since October the 8th.
Yeah, but do you know how long that is?
No.
Okay.
It's since October the 8th.
That's 6 months and 1 week to the day.
Oh my gosh. You see, he knows these things.
6 months. And 1 day. All right.
1 week.
No, 6 months and 1 week.
1 week.
Wow.
8th of October.
Well, congratulations. Congratulations.
It's been wonderful.
Yeah.
Come back to us when it's been 6 years. We'll talk again.
It has actually. It's been 9 years.
Yeah. And I just want to say that Jason is an amazing musician and creative person as well as Laura.
Husband.
As well as husband and
husband.
soup maker. That's right.
Yeah.
Creative husband is
Know me for the food.
all good things. Creativity, I think, is very important in an authentic relationship. So we're going to talk today about, let's just get started with authenticity in relationships. Like, is it different than just regular authenticity? Marital authenticity?
And spoiler alert, Myrna can speak to this too.
Yes, both are married. Myrna, how long have you been married for? It's a while.
I have to count 2013. So from 2013 to now. However, we've been together since 2005. So it's a long. Mm-hmm.
So
Wow.
10 years.
Yeah, 10 years of
10 years
marriage
married.
and 17, whatever, of getting to know each other.
Yeah.
And still getting to know each other.
Well, isn't that true?
That happens. And Gil, for the record, Gil and I have been married for how long? 22?
This is going to be 21.
21 years in
Mhm.
April. And we met in 20.
It's beautiful.
So we're gonna have a cocktail this year. For
Oh.
21. So
Heck, I just hope we can be together.
yeah.
Anyway, but enough about us. So is it different in a marital relationship, authenticity? What do y'all think?
I'd like to share because, well, I think, and it's really interesting because as I'm thinking about this, it's different stages of authenticity. Us being together for 8 years, and then
9 years.
well, no, before we got married, it was
Okay,
8. Yeah.
yeah.
And then getting married, for me, it was really trusting after becoming married that I could. It was an adjustment for me in my mind of the beliefs that I thought about being married, and I realized after getting married that I was storing beliefs about what marriage means, and those beliefs did not come up before being married, and we were together for 8.5 years. And so for me it was about really being authentic with myself and accepting that I can work through these beliefs, I can choose to work through them, and trust that however that shows up, however that displays itself, that's okay in this relationship, to be real with that, to be real with that process that I was going through. Yeah.
I think it was also you was also talking about what you thought marriage should be, not just what it was.
Yeah. Yes, that's true.
Yeah.
I had a preconceived idea of what it should look like or feel
Really?
like.
And what my role would be.
And what his role would be and what my role would be. Like roles.
Wow.
It was interesting.
I
It's
think that,
enlightening, isn't it? When you realize that. Yeah.
and I think that's a great point though, because, and that may even be a whole nother show, but how does should affect our relationships, right?
Ooh.
I mean, because we all go into these relationships with, this is what it should look like. This is what it could be. This is, whether we're basing it on what our parents had or what our parents didn't have or what we've watched on TV, so I think should is an interesting thing.
Well,
Yeah.
I think it's not only how it should look, but just our well, I guess it's a way we put it into a should category, but it's what we hope it looks like. It's what
you want it to be.
Yeah, at some level, it's what we want it to be. And sometimes people talk about being in love with the idea of love rather than being in love with a person. That we get caught up in the idea, the picture we have of what it is, instead of actually being in an authentic relationship. And I think that's an interesting thing that we have to move through to get to that authenticity. Sometimes, some people more than others, but
Right. So I'm going to go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to say here, just authentically, to thank Jason, because
You're welcome.
He really allowed me to feel that process, even though we did experience some
Turbulence.
Fallout.
and fall back, and not that there's any in and out, but it was an experience. And so I want to thank you for being there and allowing it to show up however it was going to show up.
And thank you for testing me.
Testing myself.
Testing yourself in my company.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, so I want to read you just something I found about authenticity in relationships, because let me read it to you and see what you think. Marital authenticity is more elastic and expansive. It is the sum of all the parts of the basis. It is the sum of all the parts of the basis of marriage is said to be friendship, which is true, but that description comes from consciously and proactively implementing the two parts above. These two are internal action items, and they must be the primary actions of the authentic spouse. I like elastic and expansive. That 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 feels true to me.
Mm.
I mean, there's a lot of give and take and in a marriage,
Yeah.
and I mean, for me, once I was there and really locked in, there wasn't the same options. No, because I was committed. I mean, I took a vow and I meant it, and I was committed. So I had to stretch a little more than I might have been comfortable with, and you know, because this person was that important to me, and this relationship. So I think it was an interesting description.
Yeah, that word elasticity caught me when it connected to authenticity, and it felt like, wow, that's interesting. It's like there's a spectrum of authenticity. There's a way in which you have to sometimes stretch it around things and move it around, and you can be authentic, yet yet I think that, Robyn, you spoke to it, that idea of then you realize that you also are working together and compromising in some ways, and that's authentic as well, because you are committed to what you're committed to. So you're not being unauthentic by changing something that you may have thought before, but you're adjusting your authenticity. I don't know, just something like that. So we haven't heard from Myrna yet.
I'm
I think she
actually
should say something.
pondering. I'm pondering. I'm really taking this whole thing in. I'm really, because I can hear the shoots, the conversation as we begin, the shoots and what we would like to be and all the stuff, and the quote that Robyn read and what Jason and Laura share, and I'm putting like, okay, how do I do that? How do I show up in my marriage? Who is Myrna in the marriage? And how is like sometimes I have this what I think I should be doing because I am married, or because of also beliefs. It's like this whole thing. And how do I navigate into the elasticity, as you were saying, Robyn, of how to pull it, how to let it loose a little bit, and how to pull it a little bit tight. It's just a whole. It's an interesting journey in a relationship. I'm really pondering about it because it's a touchy subject for me, but I am glad that I'm here to really understand what I am committed to. What is really my commitment, and yet also not leave behind my authentic self just because who I think I supposed to be. I want to go back to the phrase that we read last week. It really has been in my mind a lot from Brené Brown. It's the daily practice of letting go of what we think we supposed to be and really be who we are. It's in relationships. So if I think that I need to be this nice person, whatever I learn in my culture, all that stuff, is it really, really, really me, or is it just what I supposed to be? And it, again, is the elasticity where I let it go, or should I pull back a little bit? I don't know. I'm enjoying this conversation. It's making me think a lot, and maybe I can crash it by leaving. No, I'm kidding.
No,
No.
balance. It's a tricky balance. I mean, and I think being in a relationship or being in married, it's just tricky. And so I think that you brought up a good point, though, because what does it mean to be authentic to yourself? What does that mean? I mean, is it yeah, what does it mean?
I've got I've got an idea. I've taken. I'm 62 in April, and I've taken a long time to grow up. And I guess being a musician, being creative, I've always played. I've always played around. I've always played, basically. And I'm always joking. I don't take things too seriously until I got married. And then it's like, oh, wow. Now I'm also very, very authentic to myself, even before I even knew what being authentic really meant. Looking back for my whole life, I've just always been Jason. No bells attached. I'm just who I am. I show up as my authentic self. Getting married, suddenly I had to grow up, or I felt grown up because I'd got married. Wow. Jason Salmon got married.
Yeah, you did.
My best friend, we had a very small wedding, and my best friend, we've known each other since the age of 8, and he's single and completely single. I was in a relationship, but we've always both said that we would never get married.
Oh.
And suddenly he came to he was at my wedding, and he just couldn't believe it, and he was over the moon, you know, that we were getting married. And the whole day for me was this whole growing up in 24 hours kind of scenario, and maintaining that I am authentic to myself and those around me. And it's just natural for me to be authentic. I don't know anything else. I don't hide anything, and sometimes that gets me into trouble, you know, because I'm just genuinely open about myself and my thoughts. I tend to keep them to myself quite a lot, but when I do open my mouth, I'm authentic. You know, there's just no other way. And so, being married, suddenly I'm thinking that I'm supposed to be doing something else because I'm married now, and I've got to do this differently. But I think what I'm realizing is that I don't do anything differently, but I've got a different approach. I've got a different commitment, a different reason, a different why. You know, now the reason for doing things is because I'm married to Laura, so I've got to make this happen. I've got to make this work. There's no just letting it get slack. You know, I've got to pull myself up and say, okay, you know, show up in a more mature way than I would have done before getting married, but still being authentic. That's the crucial part. You know, I'm not changing myself. I'm changing my approach or my attitude or my reason.
I think you bring up a really good point, Jason.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. Clearly, Laura learned a lot as well. No, but I think you bring up a really interesting point, and you know, there's this. I don't know. I find that there's this unspoken truth that people experience when they get married, and I think, and you don't talk about it with people because you can't understand it if you haven't gotten married. And I think, you know, like people go, why is it different? You've been together 9 years. You've been together this long. You've da 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 da. But something happens. Whatever it is, it's different for everybody. But something happens when you make that commitment. And even if you've lived together, it doesn't matter. Something happens and you go through. I'll speak for myself. You know, I went through a different stage, and like, I don't know if it's just that I don't think. I mean, I think my authenticity in some ways had to get heightened, and I became more aware of who I am. And maybe it's because you're searching for who you are in the relationship, like, I mean, in the new role of, Mr. and Mrs. married mouse partner person. You know what I'm talking about?
Mhm.
Does that make sense? Yeah.
That reminds me of your story of your girlfriend who, after she got married, was upset.
Yeah, I had a girlfriend that after she got married, she was really upset. She came to her girlfriends and she went, "Why didn't anyone tell me? Why didn't anyone tell me that marriage was going to be like this?"
Mhm.
And, we were like, "We couldn't." Would you have believed us? Because whenever anybody goes, when you're in that state of bliss or whatever it is before you're going to get married, you're in that fairy tale stage on some level, and you don't want to hear. I mean, and there's not words for it because it's not necessarily bad. It's
And it's
just,
different for everybody.
and it changes, but there is a change. Like, there is a change because, yeah, it's different for everybody. So you can't really say anything. She's like, all my girlfriends, they didn't tell me anything. Like, sorry.
And also, we got married like I was 57, so it is that those patterns that I created and the thought processes of, well, what would it be like to be married? Because I'd never been married before. Jason never been married before. Been in relationships, but not said yes to being married. And so you talked about that fantasy idea of, oh, I wonder what it would be like to actually be married. And I can see from my own process that that marriage is a spiritual practice.
I like that.
Because the authentic piece is me being aware of me and how I am moment by moment in this, and how I show up for me as me in this marriage. And so it's like a continued awareness for me to learn more about myself being married.
Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead.
I read, I was actually watching a little video from a friend of mine that posted, and he was talking about also being single and being married. And the speaker of that video said, never get married when you're in love. Do not get married on the stage when you're in love, because that stage will end. It lasts, I forgot what it says, either 3 years or something like that. And it made me think about it, but also listening to this conversation, there's a part of me that kind of agrees. Because when we are, and I'm speaking for myself, when I was dating, of course, another Myrna showed up as who it is right now. And I'm not saying that I was authentic right now. It was different.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, what I show up as an authentic Myrna at that time, that's what my husband now liked about it, right? But he didn't see the other little parts that Myrna wasn't showing up, which is also part of it in a different way. And as Robyn was said, it does, there's something, once you say, I do, once you say the vows to whatever vows you decide for yourself and for that marriage, there is a shift in the consciousness of that person. At least for me, it's kind of like when I became a practitioner and I did my vows to what it meant to be a practitioner, what I was being committed to. And the funny part is I can't go back. I cannot go back to the Myrna before being practitioner. I cannot go back in some ways to the Myrna that met my husband 17 years ago. Yes, there is a part of it who has not changed. But I like also what Jason said. There is a different approach. There's a different way of behaving. Sometimes good, sometimes not so good. But it is part of it. And I think for me, the marriage, as I agree with you, Laura, it's a daily practice. It's a daily practice of who am I in this moment? How am I showing up? What gifts am I giving? What thoughts am I bringing into this relationship? And yet I'm going to be creating a really nice marriage or the opposite. So, anyway.
Well, and I would add to that when you say it's a practice, because I agree. But what was going through my head as we were having this conversation was that in love stage, going back to that in love stage, that new stage. And that was a stage in a relationship where all are willing to let some things go, or to not, if I'm going to create a date for my partner, I may have to leave work early, and I may have to, not pay the bills in that moment, and da, da, da. So your priorities or your focus has shifted, and you're focusing so much on the joy and the chase and the thrill and all of that. And then as you go through it, you begin to go, when you're feeling more secure, one's allowed to go, yeah, you know what, I can't tonight, I've got to pay the bills or whatever. And whatever that does to your emotions, it does to your emotions, and whatever that does to your partner's emotions, it does to, and so things start to add up in a different way. And so to go back to what you were saying about spiritual practice, it's like, if you have the spiritual practice that we all either have or wish we had, of being able to, nope, I get up in the morning, I write in my journal, I meditate, and I do this, that, and the other thing. When we're that committed, do we do that in our relationship, and on a different level, deciding whatever that is that needs to happen, right? So it's just it's an interesting dynamic, because I just think practice, like you said, when you said spiritual practice, I think that goes into more practices or rituals, or that's what kind of feeds the expectations of partners.
And for me, that spiritual practice includes conscious conversation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We have a very quiet audience today. I can't believe how quiet Miss Sherry Lynn is being. Okay, well, we'll continue. We'll continue. So, and welcome, Wayne. So yes,
I like it that it's quiet, Robyn. You know why? Even us, it's quiet compared to last week.
it's true.
It feels that, because I think, at least for me, it's really making me think. It's really not just like, oh yeah, whatever. Yes, but it's just really, for me, I'm really pondering about my marriage, my commitment, what I say yes to. And I like that it's being, at least for me, I like that it's being quiet, that it is, that I'm listening, paying attention to every word that is being said, not just as, oh yes, Laura said it's great and all this stuff. No, it's like, really, I am paying attention, because we all, for example, they've been married for a year and, no, what is it, October?
6 months.
I forgot.
6 months.
6 months
and a week.
Right. And I've been married for 10 years, and Reverend, it's like all different years, and we're in different stages of our marriages.
Yeah.
And one is not better than the other one, or this. And it's just, at least from me, I'm learning from each of the relationships over here. So I just want to say thank you.
And the other thing is, we're closer to when we weren't married, so it's easier for us to be in connection with the difference between the two, because it's so new for us.
Yes,
It's true. Yeah.
Well, and for us, it's so old for us, not in a bad way, but I'm really aware that at the stage that you two are at, Laura and Jason, and probably pretty sure at the stage that you're at, Myrna, I could not have let Gil move away without. I would not have been able to stay 1,000 miles away or let him on his own. Because speaking for myself, I was still in a stage of, well, what do you mean if he's alone? What happens? What will happen to me? What will happen to him? What if someone meets him? Those women in churches, you know how they are. They're all looking for a single spiritual man.
Or a married one with a spouse that's far away.
Hey, that's where I met my husband at church.
Yeah. So, but I mean, it is a different stage because I mean, through the years, I obviously I feel a little more secure in our marriage, but it really didn't have anything to do with our marriage. It had to do with me, So I mean, I feel secure in who I am and what I bring, and also clear that if someone else came along, that would happen anyway. If that's where we're at, but I couldn't have done that. So it is a different stage, and it's fascinating. It's fascinating to be authentic in that stage and to figure out if I'm really being authentic or if I'm trying to be kind to him to, go be free and do what you need to do and, whatever. So, I mean, staying authentic and really checking in to see what that's about is a big deal. But yeah, so. So Jason, you talked about being authentic to yourself. And I think that's one of the key components in being authentic in a relationship. So I just wondered if anyone else had, what does it mean to be authentic to yourself?
For me, what strikes me is just being honest, to being willing to acknowledge the truth in myself. I think so often it's really difficult to get down to this is what's really going on. This is really how I feel, particularly if it doesn't feel like it fits with what you're supposed to feel. Like, well, we're married. It's supposed to feel this way or whatever that is. And so I think getting honest about it, and sometimes it means examining it to figure out, well, what's going on there? Why am I at that place? But unless I get honest or authentic about it, I can't get there. I can't ever even go to the possibility of moving forward through something if it's just a temporary thing, if I don't acknowledge that it exists. So that's what strikes me about being authentic to the self.
For me, I think actually this weekend I had a way of really being authentic. In what you said, Reverend Gil, about the feelings. So this weekend I was feeling a lot of stuff. And Mirna went into a quiet place actually it was nice and everything, but I was quiet. I was being very quiet on the weekend. And I am so grateful my husband didn't say anything, what's wrong, or why are you doing this? Or, I mean, he just let me be. On Monday afternoon or something, I actually shared with him and I said, I was being quiet on the weekend. I was just going through some feelings, and this is where I am. In the past, I would have been afraid actually to say what I was feeling. I would have felt that I would be like, oh, come on, it's not a big deal, all that kind of stuff, like kind of deny the feelings that I was feeling, or at least in my mind. Instead, he actually listened and he said to me, thank you for sharing what you're going through. And then that was it. And I like it. I really like it after being married for many years. And this is not the first time. It has happened throughout the time. But sometimes, at least for me, I tend sometimes not to share my feelings because a response of whatever it is. But I think I gave myself permission this time to really said I was going through some stuff. And so I like what you said, that for me being authentic is even when I don't feel good, just to share. When I feel good, share and really speak from my heart, and and say what I want to say instead of pretend what I need to be.
Beautiful.
Wow.
That's beautiful. Well, I hate this time because we are out of time. And we are just
Oh,
getting,
that went quick.
we're
Dude,
just getting to the
the
meat
down
of
and dirty.
right, and there's so much, but I think you all have just cracked the nut a little bit, and I think what I hear you saying, Myrna and Jason, especially, is that to be the one of the key components for making a relationship work is to be your authentic self, and to be your authentic self you have to show up and be vulnerable and be willing, and that's not always easy. And you know you I mean, being your authentic self means um, being in touch with your values and who you are, and feeling good in your body about what you're doing, and that's one of the key components for keeping a relationship together. And like you said, Berna, on some level, owning your feelings, owning your own feelings, and no matter what they are, and owning your own messes. It can be messy. Marriage is messy, and we don't always show up the way we would like to, or the way that we think we should, or the way that we know we could. So being able to put aside your pride and say I'm sorry, or own what you've done, or and be willing to open up to the possibility of what the other person has to say. Like you said, Myrna, sometimes you just want to be heard. And it sounds like what your husband did was take in the information and walk away. Not that it won't come back again, but he heard it. You were clear that he heard it, because he wasn't defending it or anything else.
Or try to fix it.
Try to fix it.
I always have my tool belt at the ready. I am ready to go.
Yeah. and in some ways that's a great trait, but learning, you need to stick in your listening tool. Like with the kids, put your listening tool and your patience tool in there.
Well, I think the other piece I heard Myrna say was that you didn't, you whatever was going on for you, you stayed with it and you allowed yourself to be with it and be with the feelings, but you didn't push, you didn't project it out and try to make it somebody else's issue or whatever. You didn't put it on your husband. You just said, this is what's going on, and I think that's part of, as we grow in authenticity, it's like realizing, and that's part of, as we're growing in the spirituality, realizing it's not about the stuff out there, it's about the stuff in here, and there are times when I want to make it Robyn's fault, and it doesn't even make sense. I mean, if you were looking at it logically from the outside, you'd go, well, how did you even get there?
So I think the one thing, I think all of those things that we've talked about are what it takes to have authenticity in your relationship and to strengthen your relationship. And I would say that for one of the most important things is to be the spouse you want to be, and can we do that? Can we be that open ear and that patient person, or do we fly off the handle if our spouse does, or whatever? So I just think those are kind of the benchmarks that we've all brought up for having authenticity in a relationship. Would y'all agree?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's a beautiful conversation that that could go really
Could
deep
continue,
into
yeah.
different
Well, yeah,
areas.
I'd like to invite our listeners to join this panel for our workshop
Yeah.
that we'll be presenting. Yeah, I feel like there's so much more, so much untapped, and you all are such beautiful untapped resources, especially you two newlyweds over there, bringing the in love stage.
What are we? Wait.
I think, can I just say something quickly? I also think that being authentic, it relies a lot on loving yourself as well as your partner.
Absolutely.
Totally.
Yep.
I think that's, you know, you mentioned, you know, how old you were when you got married, both of you, Jason and Laura. And I think there's a level at which, you know, there's this thought, you know, that of course we're at childbearing age and all these things that happen when we're young. And yet I think most of us are totally unprepared to be married because we're totally unprepared to be with ourselves. Right.
Right.
And
Well,
so,
I was totally unprepared for meeting Laura in the first place. You know,
I was unprepared to meet you as well.
I mean, I was single for 14 years by choice, completely by choice. A relationship breakup, and I said, right, that's it. I moved, bought myself a flat, and was living quite happily, producing music and being creative and just having, you know, a good time. Quite late in life, but still just doing that. And I always said, if I was going to be in another relationship, I'm done with relationships. If for another relationship to come my way, she's got to be really special.
Oh.
And you know,
we got married.
Yeah, and here I am, sort of 25 years later or whatever it is, married.
5 years to life.
And she is special.
It's beautiful. So I am going to leave you with the words of our listener, Wayne, who is single and ready to mingle. But he says, omnipresent, nurturing energy one. And I think that, yes. Yes, because we're talking about one. And if we keep going back to the source and knowing that it's love, what would love do here? How would love react? Can I be the love? All of those things, then we show up. You know, we show up differently. And so we're going to leave it at that for now. But this is definitely a conversation and a panel of people that I'd love to be with again. So thank you so much for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you
you
for inviting us again.
Yeah, it's been wonderful.
Oh, we're so grateful that you came, and we're so grateful to everyone out there for your presence and your energy. And we just can't say enough.
And I just want to say thank you. I want to say a big thank you to Doris and George Olmsted for having their third child, who showed up a little unexpectedly, but thank God he did, because he's made my life wonderful. And Sherry Lynn says, thank you. Good to see you all out there. And we'll see you next week on Rockin the Love.
Bye. Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Gil.
Cumpleaños.